So I want to start with something really, really simple here, and then we're going to go pretty deep with it. There is a line where the sky stops being sky and it turns into something else. It turns into something that meets the ground. And this meeting point, you've looked at it your whole life and you've never once been able to touch it. And if you stand still, it stays exactly as far away as it was. If you walk towards it for even 100 years, it's still going to be 100 years away, right? And tonight, I want to sit with a question that's been following me for a while now. What am I actually moving towards? And underneath that, there's another harder one. What does the moving itself ask of me? Okay, so let's start with the horizon itself, because it's doing a lot more work than it looks like it's doing. There's a philosopher named Husserl. He spent decades trying to figure out how consciousness actually meets the world, and he kept running into the same problem that, wherever you are looking at, whatever you're looking at, a tree, a face, this room, it's never given to you whole. You only ever see one side of it, and the rest is implied. It's promised, and it's held just out of view. And he called that structure the horizon. He didn't really mean the line at the edge of the ocean as we know it. What he means is it's the edge of everything you know at any given moment. It's always there, always receding as you get closer to it, and always opening onto more. And people who have spent their career studying Husserl describe it as that his horizon isn't fixed. It bends and widens depending on who's standing at the center of it, and it's less like a wall and more like a living boundary. It's the shape of what you can actually reach from where you are standing right now. And, I find that quietly devastating and also quietly comforting as well. It's devastating because it means arrival. The way we usually think about it, that is, it's full and it's final and it's done. So that kind of arrival, it was never really on the table. And the horizon isn't actually a place that you get to. It moves because you move, and it was never going to hold still long enough for you to catch it. But it's comforting also because if the horizon always recedes, that ache of not being there yet, it's not a personal failure, right? It's not proof what you're doing is wrong and that you're doing life wrong. It's just what it feels like to be a conscious creature in an unfinished world. And every person who's ever really wanted something has felt this exact distance. It's like, every artist that's standing in front of their unfinished canvas. And so maybe the first honest answer to that question, to the questions that I was asking in the beginning of this video, what am I moving toward? It's this. It's nothing that's ever going to fully arrive. And following that is perhaps another quieter answer, is that this isn't actually a tragedy. It's just the terms that we're working under. Okay, so if the horizon never arrives, then the moving itself becomes the whole story. And moving, it turns out, isn't neutral. It has a texture, And most of the time, that texture feels like anxiety. And Søren Kierkegaard wrote about this back in 1844 in a book called The Concept of Anxiety, actually. And he's got this image I think about a lot. Someone standing at the edge of a high place, looking down. And what scares him isn't just the fall, it's the sudden realization that he is free to jump. And there's nothing stopping him except his own choosing, moment to moment not to. And Kierkegaard called that feeling the dizziness of freedom. It's not fear of danger exactly. It's vertigo that comes from possibility itself, from realizing how much is actually undecided. And I think most of us have felt a similar version of that. Standing in front of a blank page or an empty calendar. It's a life that could go a few different directions. And the dizziness isn't really about the specific choice, but it's the fact that you have to choose at all, over and over, and nobody else can do it for you. And this is the part of moving towards something that I don't think we talk about enough. We talk about the destination constantly. We talk about goals, about callings, about purpose, but we don't talk enough about how disorienting it is just to be underway, in that mid-step, not committed to anything final yet, and still free enough to turn around. And I want to say this clearly because I think this matters. That dizziness isn't a sign something's wrong with you. Kierkegaard actually thought it was the doorway, that if you couldn't feel that vertigo, there'd be no real freedom happening. It's just automatic motion, right? And the anxiety is proof that you are actually choosing something. It's uncomfortable in exactly the way being alive and awake and unfinished is uncomfortable. So before we go looking for maps, I want to just sit here with you for a second in that dizziness, because I think most of us try to rush straight past it, and I don't think that's where wisdom actually is. It helps me, honestly, in that dizziness to remember that people have been standing at this exact edge for a very long time. And some of them did leave directions. In the Sufi tradition, we are on an inner journey towards the real. We're on a tariqah, a path. The people walking it are called salik, wayfarers. And there's a distinction in that tradition that I think answers part of our question directly. There's maqam, the station, and there's hal, the state. A maqam is something you earn. Early teachers on this path, people like Al-Kushairi, they described it as ground you gain through discipline, right? Through effort, through your own sustained effort. It's something you can actually stand on because you built it over time with your attention. A hal is different. It's a gift. It shows up without you engineering it. It's a sudden opening, a wave of nearness or grief or love. And it can leave just as suddenly as it came. You can't demand a hal. You can only prepare the ground for one through the slow, unglamorous work of a maqam. And I find this distinction almost unbearably useful. It tells us moving toward something asks two different things of us, not one. It asks for sabr, and that's patience, the unglamorous discipline of showing up, at your practice, in your journals, in your prayers, on the days it gives you absolutely nothing back. And it asks for a kind of surrendered readiness too, an open hand instead of a closed fist, so that when the hal does come, the grace you didn't earn, you are not too braced to actually receive it. And most of us want the hal without the maqam. We want the opening without the years of unglamorous return. But this tradition is pretty blunt about it. The station has to be built before the state means anything you can trust. Discipline isn't the opposite of grace, it's the shape grace pours into. And so, my second answer to what the moving asks of me, it's sabr, I think. It's sabr on the ordinary days and an open hand on the rare ones. And neither one is optional, and neither one by itself is enough. There's an old Persian poem I keep coming back to. It's written by a 12th century Sufi poet named Attar of Nishapur, and it's called The Conference of the Birds. In it, the birds of the world, they gather because they don't have a king. And the wisest among them, the hopo, tells them about a legendary bird called the simur, who lives far away past 7 valleys and could be their sovereign. And the birds set out. Most of them turn back because, and I think they turn back honestly, each for a reason that sounds a lot like our own excuses. They're too tired or too attached or too scared of what they'd have to give up. But the ones that keep going pass through valleys that Attar names with this incredible clarity. I want to walk through a few of them with you here because I think they map the terrain of moving towards something better than almost anything else I know. So first there is the Valley of the Quest, where you are asked to set down your certainties, your inherited beliefs and disbeliefs both, and just admit that you don't actually know what you're looking for yet. Then the Valley of Love, where reason stops being useful and something more consuming takes over. That's closer to ishq than to any worldly likes or preferences. Then there's the Valley of Knowledge, Marifat, where everything you thought you understood turns out to be just the beginning. And then further on, the Valley of Detachment, Istighna, where you're asked to let go of your grip even on the outcome of things, even on whether or not you succeed in the end. And then there is the Valley of Unity, Tawhid. That's a glimpse that everything you've been treating as separate was never actually separate. And then there's the Valley of Bewilderment, Hayrat, which is exactly as it sounds like. It's a stretch where nothing makes sense anymore and the maps you're using stop working and you don't have new ones yet. And then finally, the Valley of Poverty and Annihilation, where the traveling self, the one who set out with such a clear idea of the destination, has to be let go of completely. Now, I'm not telling you this so you'll try to schedule your growth into 7 tidy stages. Life almost never cooperates with that kind of order, right? I'm telling you because Attar is naming something true about any real movement towards a horizon. It doesn't just change your position, it changes you. And by the time you're far enough along for it to matter, you are not the same traveler who left. And that, I think, is close to the real answer to what does the moving ask of me. It doesn't just ask for effort or even structure, it asks for you. It asks for me. The version of you that set out to not survive the trip intact. So here's how Attar's poem ends. And I want to be careful with this part because I think this is what the story is teaching us. Of the thousands who set out, only 30 actually survive all 7 valleys. They're exhausted, but they finally reach the place where the Simur is supposed to live. And what they find is a serene, wide, and still lake. And when they look into the lake, they see themselves reflected back. All 30 birds reflected back at them. So here's the pun the whole poem has been quietly building towards this whole time. In Persian, Simur literally means 30 birds. And Simur, the name of the sovereign that they crossed 7 valleys to find, it sounds like that exact same phrase, right? So what they were seeking and what they were this whole time turned out to share the same name. And I don't take that to mean the destination was fake or that all those years of walking were wasted. I take it to mean something closer to what the horizon was already telling us. That what you're moving toward and who you are becoming on the way there aren't actually 2 separate things on 2 separate tracks. At some point, if the movement is honest enough, they turn out to be the same motion, just seen from 2 different distances. There's an older idea in that same tradition that echoes this for me. It's a hadith that gets cited a lot in Sufi teaching about souls having known each other before this world. So that recognition, when it finally happens, feels less like discovery and more like remembering. And I wonder if the horizon works the same way. Maybe what you're walking toward has, in some sense, already been walking towards you. So let's come back down from that myth for a second, because I don't want this to stay abstract to you. What does any of this actually ask of a person, right? In that mundanity of the everyday, moving toward whatever it is that you're moving toward. And I want to refer to the psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott's work here a bit. He spent his whole career studying what actually allows a person to grow. He talked about something he called a holding environment. It's basically a space that's steady and safe enough that a person can risk exploring and failing and changing without the whole structure of their world falling apart around them. And he noticed something interesting, that when that holding is good enough, a person barely registers that it's even there. They just find themselves able to keep going. And I think the horizon might work the same way, which sounds strange, I know. It's not like a prize waiting at the end, but it is a kind of holding, right? It's something that's steady enough at the edge of your vision that you can keep walking without needing to arrive today. You're not grasping the horizon, and in a real sense, it's holding you. The horizon is holding you, it's giving your walking a direction without ever demanding that you finish. So maybe the moving asks less for arrival and more for a willingness to be held by something you can't actually close your hand around. And that's a hard trade if you were raised to think maturity means, having a plan and then finishing it. But I don't think that's what most real becoming actually looks like. not in the slow work of getting honest with yourself. What it seems to actually ask for, as far as I can tell, is this. It's sabr on the days that give you nothing back. It's a willingness to be dismantled a little by what you find in the valleys, instead of defended against it. An open hand instead of a fist, so the moments you didn't earn have somewhere to land. And it's a kind of trust that the distance itself, the not yet arrived part, isn't a punishment, but it's the room you needed. It's the room you needed to become someone capable of what you're actually walking towards. And none of that is comfortable. And I'm not going to pretend it is. But I've started to notice something, that the discomfort and the aliveness aren't two different feelings. They show up together, or they don't show up at all. So what am I moving towards? And what does the moving itself ask of me? I can't hand you a finished answer. Honestly, I think wanting one is part of what made the walking feel so heavy in the first place. The horizon was never going to close that distance for us. That was never its job. What I can offer you is this. The horizon isn't a lie, and it isn't a trick. It's a structure honest enough to keep receding instead of pretending to be reachable. That dizziness you feel walking towards it isn't proof you're lost, it's proof you're free. And the valleys are going to ask you to become someone the version of you who set out couldn't have imagined. And somewhere past your own exhaustion, what you're looking for and who you are becoming have a way of turning out to be closer than you thought. Held Horizon is going to be a season and not just a moment. It's going to move slowly and on purpose, because I don't think this kind of question rewards being rushed. So for now, I leave you with this line that I keep coming back to. You don't have to catch the horizon. You just have to keep walking towards it, honestly, and let it hold you while you do.